Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fast Forward Podcast. I'm Joanna Jordi. Our guest today is Fadi Abi Allam, the founder of the Permanent Peace Movement, an organization that has been dedicated for the past 35 years to creating educational programs around peace building that were integrated in schools and organizations. Fadi has worked on creating legislation for arms and gun control on a local, regional, and international level. That includes protecting children from being involved in armed conflict. The Permanent Peace Movement has also been very active in creating the framework for the Lebanese post-war reconciliation in cooperation with local organizations. So the Permanent Peace Movement has been dedicated to the implementation of Sustainable Development Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Fadi, welcome to Fast Forward Podcast.
Thank you, Joanna. My pleasure.
So what was the primordial incentive for the creation of the Permanent Peace Movement?
Look, during the Lebanese war, which lasted around 15 years, 1975 up till 1990. So during the war in the year 1986, we started as a group of university students looking together to stop war. It was just support for us, the meaning of peace. It was not, let's say, going beyond that. Since our knowledge, our education about peace, it was nothing. But I can say it just was our goodwill. And looking for peace, it is the main vision of humanity from the very beginning of life on the earth. Let's say, whatever structure we did try to build, from a religion to maybe empires, for even tribes and families and even states, all of these structures. It was for having peace. Always human being on the ground looking for peace. This is why it still exists. So existence by itself, it is peace. So during the war, where everybody killing everybody, it was not just say that there were a certain line where two, let's say, parties fighting each other. It was not like this. It was a war in all of the country, most of the country, let's say. Around 27 different wars in different places in Lebanon. Everybody fight everybody. Even the same party is fought, let's say, each other just because who will be the leader within that party or that sect or that religion or that. So, or that even camps within the Palestinian camps and the Syrian and many others. So, 1986, we met with each other as a group of university students looking for having a state without war. Peace for us is the absence of war. It was not, let's say, the comprehensive meaning of peace building that we already developed this concept, peace building, peacemaking, and peacekeeping with the agenda for peace with Boutros Ghali in 1995 within the context of the UN. So here I'm talking about 1986, around 10 years before. So peace for us during that time is no more violence, stop war. We did a lot of activities on the, let's say, very local level within the universities, where we were able to spread over around 9 universities, 9 branches, let's say, to do something. It was a kind of revolution. Whenever talking about stop war during a war, so you are doing a revolution. It is a kind even rebellion against what's going on, against everybody, because they believe that by fighting, using the arms, it is the way to escape. It is the way to stay alive. So now what you are telling them no more violence. Violence, it is not the right tool. It is not the correct tool to defend yourself. Defending yourself through dialogue. It is not other than that. And so here it is a kind of revolution actually. And but here we did try to discover what kind of activities we should do other than having a certain, let's say, sit in certain place, having some exposition for the children maybe, and some others to do some drawings about the peace, some poems about the peace, some maybe certain theater about the peace, supporting the people who were leaving their places because of the war, doing some humanitarian issues, but we didn't feel that we are doing something very special. We should find ourselves, we should discover our thing. Later, I can say here, we were able to identify our identity as it should be, as peace builders, makers, whatever. In late, let's say, 80s, 1989, we did discover that there is a field called peaceful means in conflict resolution. Non-violence. We should working on this field, let's say, in addition to control arms, in addition to more or less transitional justice. We don't have a full, let's say, meaning about that, but later developed. So it was like this, just with our goodwill and not with a certain knowledge. We did start. Then we did discover everything. We did discover later that there were some models that we can look for, like Gandhi, like Martin Luther King, like Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela during that time, he was still in the prison. So,
yeah. Wow.
So, yeah. So, but I can say whoever trying to search to look for peace, they will reach the same meanings.
It was a gradual shift in culture.
Our culture, let's say, referring to our communities here, what is power? It is violence. But for us, no, it is weakness.
Definitely.
Yeah, so here there's many misunderstandings. The same as for conflict, something normal, natural. It's not something can be positive, can be negative. The question here, how to deal with. So also conflict, it is violence. No, it is not violence. Conflict is something very normal and acceptable. And it is so important. In many situations, we have to create conflict to have our rights. Because it's impossible to have permanent peace, sustainable peace, without having rights respected.
Yeah, and conflict.
Human rights, even self-determination right. And in addition, for the state right to have sovereignty, respecting its independence, it's very normal.
Yeah, and it's also a means to evolve as well, having conflict, having difference of opinions, pointing out different experiences and different points of views. It's a way to grow together. It's a way to evolve.
Conflict is life.
Yeah.
There is conflict, there is life. It is like this. So dealing with conflict, really, it was a big issue here whenever starting, let's say, talking about and giving training about conflict analysis. Starting from this point, what is conflict? Everybody saying it's a lot of negative. Let's say, whenever asking about is there any positive? Also, why here start to think. So without thinking, with our feelings, we can reflect the negatives. But whenever coming to our mind, we will reflect a lot of positive and negative. So here we should look for any incident. We should look for any situation. Always there is no actually something absolutely positive and no issues or certain situation absolutely negative. In every negative, there is some positive sides, effects. And in every positive, we should look for where is the negative. This is why we are giving nowadays, and everybody knows that do no harm, do no harm. For what? For whom? Do no harm. Whenever you are doing something positive for the people, and mainly during humanitarian aid and like this, so we should take care for not doing harm.
So it's a balance between collective well-being and individual well-being.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And for the individual and collective well-being and how to deal with, and here coming to a situation to be successful in our dealing, we did let's say so convinced that we should go for whatever related to values. It was always here our conflict coming from our values here. Where is the ladder of values here? Like tolerance coming to down and many other accepting the other. So here coming to value, what kind of values we believe in and practically doing. So here religious, it is something to differentiate one person to another from the practical side here, or else we don't have word referring to religion like this. So there is something related to values, other related to knowledge. It is so important also whenever coming to numbers, where we have, let's say, successful processes, if it was a peaceful revolution or no coming to violent revolution and like this. So let's see through history, where were the successes? It was through non-violence. There is no other. There is no other. There is no real success coming from violence. No real success. So the negative coming from war, it is, if we look for it in a very just way, we'll see how much losses we are paying. So, and I can say, whenever coming to knowledge, it is so important to know where the word stand referring to human rights. Human rights, it is the main contributor for peace. Yes, human rights. The main contributor, because in a human right, we can see the guideline. We can see, we can identify the main issues to do our interference, our intervention. Because what is peace? Peace referring to every person on personal level. We should look for his situation. What kind of violations? This is why human security now becoming the main approach, referring to human rights. Human security, human rights for everybody. Human rights, development and peace here from the human rights, it is the base. So whenever as civil society, let's say in different fields, doing lobbying and advocacy for what? It's impossible to have any kind of sustainable peace without respecting the rights of the people. This is why also human rights within the United Nations Charter. It was stipulated within that charter, where they did create the International Committee of Human Rights, where they were able to generate what's called the International Human Rights Declaration. So yes, here it is so important to provide working on values, knowledge, mainly human rights, and to know. And here talking about values, second, knowledge, mainly human rights. Third, skills. We should know how to implement, what to do. There's not enough values and knowledge, but we need skills. How to practice it. It's the same as any other, let's say, field of work. Now becoming peace builders, it is a kind of field work. We should know how. We should know how to do.
To manage conflict.
We should know how to negotiate. We should know how to mediate. We should know how to conciliation. We should know how to do what's called goodwill offices. We should know how also to do lobbying and advocacy. Lobbying and advocacy. We should know how to design a certain non-violence revolution. How to deal with it, how to do it. So here, all of these, it is skills, talking about skills. We should know how. Knowing how, the same as any other field of work, to be a real peace builder. Now, and also maybe here, dealing with social media, which is also a kind of skill. Because here, through social media, we are creating, we are establishing what's called public opinion. Public opinion. It was, let's say, for one time through education, through the religious, let's say, forums were affecting the public opinion. Now social media playing the major role. Also, there is a need here to know the different skills related to this one to be efficient enough to do and to play our role as a peace builder as it should be.
What were the biggest obstacles and difficulties you faced in the process of peace building? Was it more from the willingness of people to forgive, or is it more from the system's perspective, a system that is basically dictated by warlords?
Look, Joanna, there is no doubt that reconciliation, it is part of peace building. It is so important, mainly for the communities where faced or emerged a certain war, and people died, lost their lives, lost their whatever they have, affected as so wounded or many. So there were a need, and whenever also certain massacres took place, atrocity crimes committed during a certain period of time, or maybe during a certain dictator regimes, or there is a need for transitional justice. And within the transitional justice, there is reconciliation. How to reconcile? Because really it's important, and mainly in our region where we believe in revenge. How to stop revenge? It's a big issue. So we have two parties, let's say, and everybody affected in a way or another, killing each other, and our history repeat itself. Because there were no real reconciliation took place, and they didn't know what is transitional justice. So it is not actually retributive justice. Here a big challenge related to their mentality, and how to reconcile as it should be, how to acknowledge, let's say, a certain crime. So here it is a process where the people who are doing or running or facilitating such a process, it is so important for them to look for the situation from all of its perspective, and there are duties referring to every party and not to one, and here going to reconcile. It is related to transitional justice. It is not, but it is closer to restorative justice than to retributive justice. And dealing with our memories. It is so important here, dealing with our memories. And also, it is a kind to stop impunity. It is really a substantial one. And it is important also to look for our regime and to do the required modification for our system, or else it will repeat again. So transitional justice going for different pillars, let's say. One of them looking for the people who are affected, who are the victim, looking for the victim's rights, needs, what kind of needs, what kind of rights they have. We should look for the victims. We should look for the others from the logic of preventing impunity, and other how to look again for our system, all of it, and mainly the justice system within a certain community. Doing all of these, it can give what's called transitional justice to prevent any community again to go again for any other war. So, yeah, all of these, it was our main field of, let's say, activities in different places, not just in Lebanon, but in all of the Arab region, because we are so similar to each other, from Lebanon to Syria to Iraq to Yemen, even Sudan and Libya. So our challenges to a great extent similar to each other. So here, the Permanent Peace Movement, the local organization, were started in a certain university in Lebanon. We're able to do our activities in all of this country, in all of Lebanon, but starting the year 2000, around 20 years or 21 years ago, we were able to move for all the Arab communities. Actually, we are interact with each other. Even during the Lebanese war, there were a lot of Arab fighters coming to fight. Palestinian, Syrian, even from other, coming to Lebanon to fight. And the same as whenever the war was in Syria and Iraq, there were many Arab, even some of them Lebanese. They went there to fight.
Mm-hmm.
In Syria, there were Tunisian fighters, a lot, thousands. So here, we are theoretically countries, the Arab world, but from the practical side, we are so close to be considered one country. Same language, somehow our religions so similar, and majority are maybe Muslim here, and speaking Arabic, our traditions and culture somehow the same. So, and at the same time, we are living our world, let's say, but unfortunately, we are not giving our peaceful, let's say, way of life where it still exists in different places to the international community, other than giving them and exporting them terrorism, unfortunately, and violent and unfair, let's say, way of life within our local communities, mainly for the women and youth.
What you're saying is that transitional justice is very instrumental in preventing the conflict, the same conflict or the same violence from repeating itself in other different cycles of history. So it's a way of stopping this conflict once and for all and creating an evolution towards a true and permanent peace. So this is what this culture and this work is about. It's creating permanent peace, the sustainable peace.
Here we did believe that to build a peace after war, there are three main pillars. The first one is transitional justice, as I just talk about, related to reconciliation, to victim, to impunity, to reform, having a structured reform for any country. So that's one side. But also, it's not enough. We should go for another two pillars, which is the issue of PDR, disarm, demobilize, reintegrate. It is really so important.
So arms control.
We can't achieve peace without dealing with this issue. And there is another highly important issue, which is peace education.
Okay.
Working on these three pillars, I think by doing so, we are building sustainable peace.
How will Lebanon reach a true reconciliation from civil war and all the conflicts and injustices that took place?
Look for whenever coming to transitional justice, it is so important to look for different components of transitional justice. One of it, looking for the victims. Looking for the victims, and here we have to talk about reconciliation. Victims, there is a need. First of all, here we should identify who are the victims of war. Who are the victims? The people who killed, the people who displaced, the people who missed any of their relatives, let's say, relied on, the people who are disappeared. So here, the families always looking for justice. And also here, so important to reconcile here with the perpetrators, let's say, or the criminals here. And we here, from the other side, we have the victim. And reconciliation going through different, let's say, fields or terminologies, working on, let's say, acknowledgement. It's so important to acknowledge, and also to forgive.
Okay, so acknowledging the wrongdoing, what was perpetrated, the injustice,
there is other than
admitting to the injustice that happened.
Yeah,
right?
We have the acknowledgement. It's coming usually from the perpetrator side, but also to have اعتذار, what's called
apology.
Apologize, yes, to apology. And in addition to compensation. And compensation here, it will take different forms, and different forms, materialistic and something psychological one. And here compensation, it can come from the government side, and also from civil society side, and from the family side. Everybody can compensate, working on compensation with all of its. So here, it's a community responsibility. Everybody have a certain role to play on. In Lebanon, we had actually the Ministry of Displaced, where we were able to do a substantial role, but not everything. There is still missing issues. So here, before, whenever doing all of this, we can ask for tolerance and forgiveness from the criminal or perpetrator side, where in most of the situation, the same party, they were victims and they were perpetrators or criminals or like this. So there were no one side who killed the other. It was not like this. Everybody killed everybody. And you can see in a certain person, or certain people, or certain group where they affected or they were victims. At the same time, they did play a role of criminal and perpetrators for the others. So here, it is a process, very complicated, interrelated, interacted within, and at the same time, we cannot say that there is a certain responsibility exists on the governmental level. It is everybody level, where here our organizations, they did play a role as civil society doing our role. It is not because the government were not able to do their role. Their role, it is their role and our role and everybody's role. So here, the responsibility to reconcile and to having a real reconciliation, it is the responsibility of everybody. On the governmental level, on the civil society level, on the religious level, education level, on everything. Everybody is responsible for peace. Nobody can do everything related to peace. Everybody can do something and nobody can do everything.
Okay, so it's a collective responsibility.
Our responsibility as civil society to play such an important role. So that's what happened we were able to visit not less than 200 villages, mainly in Mount Lebanon, trying to have together mainly the youth and the women, these people, because it was really so important to reset again, to sit, some of them to sit again. It never happened before. So to sit with each other, to get know each other, talking about their challenges, having a real dialogue to rebuild a relationship, to rebuild friendship, let's say, and discovering here that your challenge, it is the same as mine. Your dreams for a special site, it is my dreams. So our common destination, it is beyond our coexistence. It is so important to create such a community reconciliation. That's what happened, and we were able to play a substantial role for having real reconciliation in a part of Lebanon, let's say, and contribute. We were able to contribute for many places, such as in Tripoli, other than here, Mount Lebanon, in Tripoli, in Bekaa, surrounding Irsal, there were some clashes took place, and a lot of activities also took place in the south of Lebanon, in addition to our role and our activities referring to many schools, public and private schools.
Arms and guns trade is a major perpetrator for civil peace.
Look here, it is really so important, this issue, because within our mentality, give the people arms, they will kill each other. Why we are talking about that? It is right, actually. But not every community giving them arms, they will kill each other. It is not like this.
Okay, so it's a culture.
Whenever talking about arms, besides mentality accepting violence as a tool, and glorify, let's say, killing.
Force, yes, and power.
Hero. So whenever having this mentality, and at the same time, conflict for them, it is something negative, and not solved, let's say.
They don't have the proper tools to manage conflict. Yeah.
So conflict from one side, without having special processes to deal with conflict, in absence of, let's say, in absence of a certain process within the human rights context. So without waiting that there will be a certain solution one day, just waiting and waiting nothing, having problems without solved, and problems based on rights violation for, let's say, decades. Having this situation of problems, of conflicts, of challenges within the community, in addition to a certain mentality, certain education, glorifying violence and like this. So for these people, giving them arms, they will kill each other.
Okay.
So arms alone, it is just a part of a certain iron. It is nothing. It is nothing. But arms, besides these other two, it will be a real problem.
Okay, so it's a culture of violence that is combined with the acquisition of arms.
This is why we did try to deal with all of these three. From one side, trying to work on transitional justice, tolerance, and providing peaceful means in conflict resolution and non-violence. All of these, still missing controlling arms.
Okay.
These three, if it is missed, a war will start. Here, I'm talking about the direct causes. I'm not talking here about, let's say, poverty or unemployment or so here there are many or a special regime if it is democratic or not, and so here talking about the direct triggers of war, let's say. So we did try to work on all of these peaceful means in conflict resolution, reconciliation, and transitional justice, and control arms as much as we can, because it exists here actually everywhere without having regulations. Our regulation is so weak. In Lebanon, let's say the law dealing with small arms and light weapons, referring to the year 1959. Since 1959 up till now, everybody can imagine how much progress actually took place all over the world, how to deal with these issues. So we didn't do any kind of modification of our laws since that year, 1959, more than maybe 70 years or 60 years, maybe 60 years plus. So much. A lot of progress actually happened. And whenever going to modify, going to our, whenever, let's say, a need to modify any law, looking for the people by themselves. If there is a need, we should modify. Changes, the challenges. So here, working on laws to solve, to regulate, to develop, and to do a certain progress through law. It is so important for that. And also looking for the international progress, so we can get, let's see, information, knowledge from them. So which has not happened at all. There were a need internally, and there is a progress within the international human rights law where we didn't bring any, let's say, real changes to our regulations related to laws. And also trying to work on mentality.
Okay.
Here. The law is side and the mentality from other side. And working on the regional level and international even, trying to address this issue. For the mentality, a lot of seminars, a lot of using even social media for having some films to address such a mentality, we're having to let's say, possess arms and even to use it far out of any kind of laws. So referring to this issue, we did a lot. We were a part of international campaign, control arms. It is an international coalition where they were able to contribute a lot for the POA, which is the Program of Action related to small arms and light weapons, illicit trade of small arms and light weapons from all of its perspective, and later for the Arms Trade Treaty. I was one actually of the founders, not founders, let's say, of the coalition, of civil society coalition, where we did contribute a lot. And me, from my side, I did contribute for the justification for having such a treaty, giving a Middle Eastern perspective of the civil society. Actually, we did visit many places, trying to defend our right to put this mean of war under control. It's illogic for having laws, international laws, related to everything surrounding us, but not ours. After the World War II, the international community were able to put under control the mass destruction arms, chemical, biological, and even nuclear. For the NPT and now non-proliferation arms treaty, and now for the ban treaty for the nuclear. But what about the conventional weapons? What about the small arms? It is out of any legal control. So now it is since the year 2014, at the end of 2014. It's actually the date of birth, it was yesterday, 24 of December 2014.
Wow, that was when there were legislation. Okay.
The Arms Trade Treaty entered into force.
Yeah, because small arms are the biggest, they are the most problematic in Lebanon and other countries as well. I mean, the use of small arms, and there are so many victims of the use of this type of violence. So it's a very valuable legislation.
Referring to some researchers talking about 1,700,000 of small arms proliferated in all of Lebanon without having a real control on them. This exists. We are on the international scale, the seventh for arms possession per person in our country.
That's a lot of people being armed. That's too much, yes.
I think for every 100, we have 30. For every 100 people, we have 30 small arms.
So tell us more about your experience in integrating peace-building culture within schools. How were the responses, and what were the unexpected elements of this process?
Look here, it is, if we look again for the main pillars, let's say, of peace building, let's say, for communities after war, beside transitional justice and control arms, we have what's called peace education. Peace education, we cannot build peace by son of war. Son of war are the people with their mentality, believe in violence. So I'm not talking just about the people who, let's say, handling arms and fighting, but also for their very close community where encouraging them to do so, unlike their law. So here it is not, we should not have it like this at all. So peace education, it is so important for everybody, to cover everybody, and not just the ex-fighters. Should go for the whole community, where we should go again for the different component of peace education, to have it on the state level, within the Ministry of Education, to establish what's called a peace education curriculum, and to disseminate it for everybody. All the schools, all our students should be in here. Working on such a mentality is a must to move from war to peace. Really here, it is not a marginal issue. It is a highly substantial one. And the different components of the peace education should go for, first, the values, the same as I did mention about tolerance and accepting the other, let's say, going for the positive side of diversity, how we can have diversity as something rich the community and a real wealth of any community, and in addition for that, human rights, whatever related for that, to know our rights as citizenship and how to practice our citizenship, and the different peaceful means in conflict resolution. Mainly here, how to have real dialogue. Dialogue, it is so important for our daily life on all levels, not just on the political level, and not just a tool to solve our conflict, but also for having dialogue to organize to regulate our relationship, and and to protect our communities as a prevention step before going to any armed conflict or a conflict, than to look how to solve it through dialogue. So dialogue here, it is so important to have it for our children, and how to mediate, because our mentality is creating conflict, and the other responsible have the responsibility to solve our conflict on all levels. Within the school, we can see any students can, let's say, having clashes against each other, a certain conflict, and usually the teacher coming to mediate, or anybody, let's say, from the administration of a certain school, to do the role of mediation. So here, our programs, it was for the school peer-to-peer mediation, our responsibility to mediate within, among each other, and not to ask for having external mediation, because such a mentality actually we usually take it for our political level. Usually our problems here, we have to go for maybe Doha, Taif, Geneva, and many places, maybe St. Cloud in France, to solve our problems, but never happened problems within France, let's say, going to United States or to Britain to solve it. It is not like this. We should not have it like this. We should be responsible to solve our problems on our level, because it is the same as this participatory way, let's say, the same as here, building our responsibility, building our citizenship, building our, let's say, a real citizenship, to be responsible on our conflict, our level, to be able to be responsible on the community and national level. So here, it was really a highly successful project and programs we did adopt, and asking one day to have it on the national level, not to continue play it as permanent peace movement, but to be taken as a Ministry of Education, to make it applicable for all the schools of Lebanon. And here they can cooperate with different civil society organizations who are exist, because here not just the formal system, let's say, of education, the informal one, it can be and connecting schools to their local communities and local organization. It is so important to practice citizenship. So yeah, can I go for different perspectives related to this one? One of them is this issue. So yes, peace education. We cannot imagine a certain society can go from war to peace without passing, let's say, through the peace education, beside the others, control arms and transitional justice.
I love how you expressed. So I love the idea that you expressed that the way we deal with conflict in school reflects on how we manage governance at a higher scale, at the national scale.
It is the same. And even here, Joanna, if we look for our families, even within our homes, how to deal. And if any two children, let's say, fight each other and having in conflict with each other, usually the mother or the father coming and telling, you have to do like this, and the other to do, they will solve our, let's say, the children problems. Where we should here use our power, let's say, in a positive way. Why not to give them a certain period of time, let's say half an hour, and you'll be responsible to solve your problem. I'll be back after an hour, let's say, to see how you did solve it. It is much better than to solve it for them. So understanding the conflict
So it's skill.
and
It's providing a
dealing
skill.
with it. And here it will give us a real capacity, like a built-in capacity. It is so important to come from our own and not to import it from outside. Whenever you build a person like this, you are building a real, flexible, interactive, positive community. And here you build a personality with a flexible mind, be able to understand the other and interact with the other and looking for the positivity of the other and not for just for the negative, but it is all of these issues interact with each other, relate to each other, contribute for building a peaceful person related to all of these. Positivity toward ourselves, to look for myself and not to hate even myself, on the personal level, looking for the positive issue, looking for the whatever having strengths, and not to look for myself through whatever I don't have.
Okay.
So important to look for myself from whatever I have.
So leveraging the positive in each person.
Looking for the other, and starting from myself. So a person who reconciles with himself, say, is a person who is looking for the positivity, whatever he has, and not whatever I don't have. Nobody have everything all the time, in all situations. Always there is something missing. So here on the personal level, it will help to build a healthy relationship with the other who has something and some other he don't. Not just blaming, not just looking in a negative way, not just how to be a cooperative person.
Okay.
What is cooperation? Cooperation relying on whatever I have and whatever you have. And both together interact. And if there is something in common we don't have, let's look for a third one who has it to complement each other. So you need here this flexibility, need a flexible dialogue to facilitate this mechanism within a certain community.
So school is such an important place to start in order to cultivate the culture of peace and peace building and really gathering all those important skills. How important is the role that youth would play in peace building, especially today, in implementing Sustainable Development Goal 16 and in arms control particularly?
Sustainable Goal 16, let's say here, we are all on the globe here, interact with each other and putting these, identifying these goals, it is really so important. Trying to build a global human culture, global citizenship. Talking about peace and justice, look here in the same goal 16, peace and justice. Peace and justice, yes. No peace without justice. Like this. No peace without justice. But how to have, if there is injustice, we should go for war or what? Here is the tool, it should be non-violence, as it is. Let's have non-violence to build a justice, to build the justice as it is. There is no other than that. So using war to build justice, war by itself, it is injustice. Just war is just war. So
non-violence is the basis of institutions.
By war in all situations.
Okay.
Here the Crusades, they invaded the East 1,000 years ago under slogan, just war. No,
there's nothing just about war.
Pope of Rome. So he said that just war is just war. It's like this. So thanks for him for this new explanation of war. So we should, if there is something we should hate, war. We should not. We should always separate person from any issue. We should respect any person. We should deal with any person. All of us, we created on this, let's say, urge to respect each other, to cooperate with each other.
What is the role of women in peace building, in your perception?
Wow. This is for the whole world, and the need exists in our region. Because the role of women is outside the whole process, not of peace, but the political life. They are not exist. Whenever talking about 1%, 2%, 3%, it is not a real representation of the women where they are representing not less than 50% of our population, of the graduates from universities and like this. So how is it whenever coming to decision making, talking about 1%, 2%, 3%? There's something missing. So one of the, let's say, factors of war making is the underrepresentation of women. Before talking about 1, 3 to 5, they should. We have war because they are underrepresented in the public life. So here a real challenge exists to have a full participation of the woman. And the issue of women, it is not an issue about the woman and by the woman. It is an issue for everybody. It is a human rights issue. It is my responsibility, the same as your responsibility, Joanna. To build a peace, it is now an issue, not just a peace building, but also state building. State building to have a real or just state, or state built on justice, let's say. It is a state where we have a full representation of the woman within the decision making on the public life, let's say, and having a woman full participation or just participation on that. So now some Arab countries, and Lebanon one of them, they were able to develop a national plan. But here, the national plan, it is so important to have it. I believe so, yeah. But also now the challenge is to implement and to put it in action. And also here, the community, from the governmental side and civil society life. So having the responsibility from civil society side, having such a responsibility to make it implemented, or to make it real in our real life.
Fadi, how do you envision Lebanon reaching peace, justice, and strong institutions on the long term?
Look here, let me, frankly speaking, it is not an issue of a switch from to. It is take time, but not without doing anything. We should work and it will take time. Or else the time it will be longer and longer. If we did our job now, the time will be less. But who are dreaming that between day and night everything will change, it is a dream by itself. But without doing anything, we'll continue like this. We should do our job. We should do our duties. It is a duty. We should do our responsibility to build such a community, having in our, let's say, vision, human rights respecting approach, human rights approach, and do as much as we can for the mentality, the meaning, and the structure relying on law, and the structure relying on human rights, a kind of circle. As much as we can contribute to whenever any opportunity exists, we should exploit. We should do work on all levels and with everybody. We should not stop working. Always there are a lot to do. Wherever a certain responsibility, a certain opportunity exists, we should go ahead. So having community like this one, active community, here the role of civil society is extremely important. Having together the youth and the women, these marginalized portions of our community should go ahead and play their role as much as they can. After a time, a change will happen.
Hopefully so. Fadi Abi Allam, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, for inspiring us to implement sustainable development goals. From Fast Forward 2030 Lebanon, let us honor our human and natural heritage to create the best life conditions possible for future generations.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Hopefully, all together we can have peace, and we will have, if there is a will, there is a way.